Incoming President-elect, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has said he will dismantle the U.S. Department of Education and hand over that authority to the states. Let's listen to what he said.
And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children, because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states.
All right, now we should just remind folks as to some of the grants that come out of the U.S. Department of Education. They include Pell Grants, there was Title I funds, special education. There's also literacy, math, nutrition programs. So just to remind everyone, this is what the U.S. Department of Education does. And tech companies do benefit from that as well. I want to talk to Ebun Okubanjo, who is the founder of Bento Africa, joining us from New Jersey to talk further. Ebun, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. So my first question to you, Ebun, is, and it's good to see you again. So does President-elect Trump have a point? Does he have a point? Some argue that using one data point of an education budget to address nationwide decline in math and science may not be a fair analysis. What do you think?
I mean, I think that, first off, thanks for having me. We've been having this conversation for a while in terms of me being on your show. So it's nice to finally be here. Does Mr. Trump have a point? I think he does. In terms of when we look on aggregate how American schools are performing vis-a-vis the rest of the world in math and sciences. But as with everything else, it's pretty much nuanced, because if American education is so bad, it's completely disastrous, and we need to dismantle the Department of Education and send the money to the states. Number one, what we have not talked about is what are the states going to do differently? Because as someone that went to school in the US, I can tell you that the states currently have a lot of say. So by giving the states more money, what is going to be different? And dismantling the DOE in of itself carries a lot of problems, because he's only talking about K-12. The DOE, like you rightfully said in the beginning of the show, does handle higher education also. So it has a point, but at the same time, when we look at the data, let's take a look at the rankings of the top mathematicians in the world, the top 3,000. Of the top 3,000, 1,100 of them are Americans. The closest number 2, which is the UK, as 128 top-ranked mathematicians in the global rankings. If American education is so bad and we need to dismantle the DOE, why is it still the envy of the rest of the world? Why do people continue to send their kids to our schools? I mean, I say our in this sense as a Nigerian American, but yeah. but why do people continue to send their children to America to study at the same, and finally, if American education is so incredibly bad, why is it that the most innovative companies, the best companies, we're talking about the largest companies in the world, the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world, the open AIs of the world. I mean, is Europe even in the AI race? Yeah. I mean, I know China is. So this notion that American education is so bad, but yet American education produces the best outcomes, doesn't quite jive. So there's something missing there that I think Mr. Trump isn't talking about. I want to be clear, I did not support Mr. Trump, but I mean, I do wish him well. As a Nigerian American, I do care that our presidents are successful. That said, I don't understand the point of dismantling the Department of Education.
Thanks, Ebun, for that point. Okay, so as far as some of the challenges that U.S. education faces, what do you think needs to happen to improve it? Some suggest spending more money on paying teachers better. Maybe if we look at through K-12, what do you think needs to happen to improve it? Or is it a state issue where some states are dragging down other states, dragging down the national average?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look on aggregate American performance in education, there is a one-to-one correlation between the income of the local county, the state, and the educational outcomes that we see. Most parents try to move to better neighborhoods just so that they can have better schooling. So what would lead to better outcomes is to give, it's not so simplistic. It's not to say we have to pay teachers more. We can pay teachers all the money that we want to pay them. But if the parent says no, at age 14, you need to drop out of school and you need to go get a job. Or if the parent is not involved in the child's life, if there are so many factors that affect educational outcomes that we cannot just put on educators, that we cannot just lay on our teachers and our administrators. As a society, we have a much broader problem that we need to deal with. And to just think that closing the DOE will all of a sudden raise math scores and science scores, I can assure you that isn't going to happen. That is absolutely a joke.
And thanks for that. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk. I know you've been following what's happening in Argentina with Javier Milei, that famous picture with him and the chainsaw, and Trump seems to be looking at other agencies taking this approach. If he's to, I just want to get your thoughts on cutting spending of government. Do you think the U.S. government is too bloated? What does he look like if he takes this approach to other agencies? Because I hear environmental protection could be the EPA, could be next, and others. Well, what's your take on, I guess, government size and slashing spending and all that?
I mean, so generally, you and I make salaries, right? And we have to make sure that whatever we make, we live well within our means. So I do think it's very important that governments have balanced budgets. For the first time, the American debt is equal to its GDP. That is not sustainable. So we do have to look at ways in which we can we can balance the scale. But the question is not necessarily as simple as what can we cut. If we look at our highest cost drivers, particularly in America, it's Medicare, it's Medicaid, it's defense spending. This trifecta is so big. Any attempts to cut that, I suspect, would not go well with the American people. And when it comes to balancing the budget, number one, I think we need to look at how we allocate resources. We currently spend 5% of national budget on education, but we spend 13% on defense. Now, I would think that it probably makes sense to flip that 13% and spend that on education, although I'm not necessarily sure that more money would lead to better outcomes in education. But we can readjust how we spend. And also, one of the things that Mr. Trump promises is that I'm going to cut taxes. So he's saying that I am going to reduce the amount of money government makes. Okay? I'm going to reduce the amount of money government makes. And then I am going to go and look at these agencies that account for less than 6% of of like government spending, and somehow that is going to lead us to a balanced budget. I think what they are not saying and why they're going after the Department of Education is really the important part. The Department of Education and its spending is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. American education is still the envy of the world, regardless of how poorly we perform in math and science competitions globally. American companies are still the envy of the world. So there's got to be another reason why they're going after the Department of Education. And I don't think it has to do with education or math or science.
All right. Now, do you think there's going to be some pushback? You know, there are a lot of teacher unions in the United States, although Trump does have a mandate. I mean, he won the popular vote. It looks like he's going to take over. The Senate is for Republican. I think the House might flip as well. So what do you think as we move forward, and once he gets inaugurated in January and he does push forward, do you think there's going to be significant pushback? How do you think the electorate is going to take it for the DOE?
He has the right to shut down the DOE. And I suspect that he would. Now, when and if he does, I think it's going to be completely immaterial, at least from K-12. K-12, for the most part, is handled by the states. When it comes to higher education, on the other end, I went to school and I got student loans. My student loans were from FAFSA. FAFSA is the Federal Administration of Financial Assistance or something along those lines. I got Pell Grants. So I think where we're going to see the problem is the very thing that's made America very strong, which is its higher education system, is what this very move would probably end up hurting, because it's the federal it's the higher education institutions that do get most of this money. For the most part, the states do handle K-12. Yes, there's going to be a lot of pushbacks, but I think in the grand scheme, this is more part of the culture wars. What in that video that you showed at the beginning, what Mr. Trump was talking about is we're going to send the money to the states. We want people to have school choice. What does school choice mean? School choice means that we want to privatize K-12. This is for his Wall Street guys. This is for his investor class guys. And as someone who is a capitalist, I don't necessarily have a problem with privatizing K-12. I live in Nigeria. I've seen that most of our kids go to private schools. Government, for the most part, does not play a huge part in how we educate our kids. I mean, although we know that the Ministry of Education sets the guidelines, and you have to be accredited by the Ministry of Education before you can start a school. So completely okay with the conversation around school choice. When they say we're going to bring in teachers that love America, what they're saying is that we want to get rid of critical race theory. Critical race theory is the concept that we are going to teach American history the way it is, which is that America has done some bad things in the past. Things like slavery, colonization. Maybe Christopher Columbus is not the hero that we make him out to be. We are going to give students a new view, kind of that old Howard Zinn view of the world. And there are a lot of quote unquote patriots that hate that concept. They want America to be thought as this great, perfect thing. And I think that's so foolish, because most of us know that America's made mistakes. Doesn't mean that we don't love it. And I think what better place to teach, to build minds than in classrooms, that to tell young minds that, you know what, sometimes people make mistakes, but you can rise from it. America certainly did rise from those mistakes, but those folks who are against critical race theory, those folks who want to burn books, those folks who want religion in the classroom. I think this is a move for them. This has nothing to do with math and science. This is just a way of saying we are going to give full local control to people. We are going to look for privatization, and we want to make sure that the liberal bent that education seems to have is corrected, and we can start to get some more conservative voices there so that our kids don't become whatever they are afraid of them becoming.
Ebun Okubanjo, founder of Bento Africa. Always a pleasure talking to you. So it's too rare. I got to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you talking to us on the Global Business Report. Take it easy.